Luffy has now shown a repeated pattern of thinking that holograms are the same thing as the ghosts produced by Perona's Devil Fruit power, because he made the same comment while fighting Kizaru's light clones as he did when he believed that Atlas was a hologram, after encountering several of them in the Fabrio phase. And speaking of Atlas, the final panel with Saturn makes it pretty clear that the plan that she decided to put into effect this week will be soon turned on its head. See, the reason Atlas thought that it was a good idea to go downstairs to give the pacifistas a new order in the first place is because she's under the belief that her and the other Vegapunks are the highest authority currently at Egghead that could command the pacifistas, which isn't true. Saturn is. Except she doesn't know that yet because Saturn didn't want anybody to find out that he was there. So, aside from Jujutsu Kaisen breaking the intestines of the internet this week could also be said to mark the opening of the door for Saturn to be involved in the conflict of Egghead. So what if he ends up getting killed? I think a Gorosei dying would merit the headline of Major Incident at Egghead that Shocks the World. By the way, Borsalino has been 10 out of 10 holding it down here, man. And something to note here is that as of this week, Borsalino has now officially used all 3 of his techniques that are referencing sacred Japanese treasures, which include a mirror, a jewel, and a sword. He used the mirror, Yata no Kagami technique, to bypass the sea beast at the shore and to get into the island. Then he used the sacred jewel technique, Yasakani no Magatama, to attack Sentomaru. And then this week, he also used it again as he was flying above the water to disperse himself and get himself back into the island. And then finally, he gave each of his clones a sword, and that sword is called the Amano Murakumo. And again, I'm a huge fan of how he's been able to maintain his composure throughout all of this. I mean, in a way, he's actually trolling Luffy right back with his use of sarcasm. Oh no! Be gentle, Mr. Yonko. And because we've already seen him use those 3 techniques already, I'm pretty sure we should be getting to see some new ones pretty soon. And again, in addition to fighting a Yonko, he has 3 things that he needs to protect, possibly 4 if Saturn gets involved. After this is over, Kizaru should be getting the equivalent of the One Piece Medal of Honor just for attempting this. And just as a quick side note here, I really enjoyed the official English translation of Kizaru's dialogue as well, because he says, Now, let's not get carried away. Now, York actually told the Gorosei recently that she needs the power plant at Egghead in order to be able to create the mother flame that they want. So if the lab gets destroyed on accident during the fighting, I'm pretty sure the Gorosei would have no problem whatsoever with changing their minds and then giving the order to have York killed there at the island. Additionally, Bonney being significantly younger than we initially thought that she was does bring up some questions in regards to moments like these and how long ago they actually happened. It gets me to wonder if her devil fruit power had like a side effect similar to Sugar's Hobby no Mi, which physically stops the user from aging after they've consumed the fruit. And that's why Sugar looks like she's 10, even though she's actually 22. Another possibility that I thought of here is that since cloning and clones have been at the forefront of the arc, with characters like Stussy, Weevil, and the Seraphim, I'm wondering if Bonney could actually turn out to be a clone of Queen Connie from Sorbet Kingdom. At one point, Bonney does tell Luffy that she's been in Egghead before, back when she was a kid. So maybe she was created there, and maybe she's a clone that either doesn't age or ages very slowly. Then again, she might just be a little girl, because we've seen her cry a lot. Plus, she also fainted because of some bugs. So those are kind of indicators that she might have the mentality of a little girl. Then again, Sugar fainted because of Usopp's wild face. I'm sure all will be starting getting revealed once Kuma gets to the island. And with that in mind, since we know that the pacifistas were based off of Kuma, and since we know that Oda has made it a point to repeat that it is possible for a clone to continue to have some of the same feelings and memories as the original body, if Saturn ends up overriding Atlas's command, I wonder if there's anything that the original Kuma could do to override even Saturn's command. Also, Sentomaru definitely deserves some recognition here, because he just kept getting back up, proving how strong his guard actually is. So the L's he's taken for the team here definitely up my respect for him. Plus, any feat that we've gotten from Sentomaru defense-wise is also a feat that hypes up Kizaru's defense automatically. It's actually crazy how much light as an agent has been present throughout this entire arc. We got holograms, light-touching pressure gloves, Bonney was using a lightsaber at one point, pacifistas that have lasers based off of Kizaru's Devil Fruit ability, and I think Vegapunk explaining exactly what he did to transfer that aspect of the fruit's power to the pacifistas could help us learn more about Logias. And I want to make a point about something that'll happen in the future that perfectly connects with the way the chapter ended, and to do that I have to go back in time right before the time skip happened. Specifically, I have to go back to Rayleigh. So as most of us know, Rayleigh is a character that actually appears all the way back in chapter 19 of the story. He's the guy who breaks up the fight between Shanks and Buggy as they're arguing over the temperatures of the poles. Now, even though Rayleigh making an appearance that early in the story is actually pretty cool, and even though Oda said in an SBS that he always knew that the character he was drawing back then woman was the first mate of Roger's crew, I'm pretty sure that Oda did not come up with Rayleigh's actual name until much later. More specifically, I'm pretty sure that Oda only settled on the name Rayleigh for Rayleigh at around chapter 500, which features his formal introduction into the story in Sabaody Archipelago. See, the name of Rayleigh is actually a reference to a phenomenon that involves light known as Rayleigh scattering, which in real life plays a role in why it is that we perceive the sky as blue.
It's a little complicated to explain, but basically what happens is the following. The natural color of our sun is white. So if we were to look up at the sun without the atmosphere interfering or it acting as a lens, we would see the sun as white. Now, even though it doesn't seem like it, white light is actually made out of light of different colors. So if you take the white light from the sun and you break it apart, you split it up, you essentially get all the colors of the rainbow. That's why when you look at light through like a water droplet or a prism, you kind of see like a mini rainbow there. And so what ends up happening is that the white light of the sun hits the atmosphere and interacts with the particles there. And through Rayleigh scattering, what Rayleigh scattering does is that it intercepts the blue light from the white light, it intercepts the blue, and then scatters it all over the place. Now, why is this relevant to One Piece? Well, I just showed you a clip of Rayleigh clashing with Kizaru. And so again, both of those characters are formally introduced to us at the same time in the story, in the same arc. And so I think it's very likely that even though Oda might have had the Silvers part of Rayleigh's name already figured out so that it matches with Goldie Roger's name, right? I kind of suspect that he only decided on the Rayleigh part of Rayleigh's name while he was planning Sabaody Archipelago, and he knew he would introduce Kizaru, who is an admiral with light powers, in the same arc. And I think most of you have noticed how Egghead seems to have a lot of echoes to Sabaody Archipelago, and Oda has already made it clear here that he's working his way towards this shocking climax that will have worldwide repercussions. And so in rereading some of the material, I actually noticed two main factors that I'm pretty sure are going to play a very important role in the climax of the arc. No, it's not the light pressure gloves. There's something else at play. I mean, I'm pretty sure the gloves will play a role pretty soon, but more specifically, the factors that jumped out at me actually have to do with two of the Straw Hats.
On a somewhat related note, some fans are currently speculating that Katarina Devon has already infiltrated the Straw Hats, and what started this conversation in the first place was that we got an abrupt change between panels of Sanji holding onto the Vega tank, and then we cut away and Franky's holding onto the tank in the exact same place and manner as Sanji was doing previously. So it kind of made it seem as if Sanji had morphed into Franky.
Now, upon further inspection of the chapter, we do get to see that in the panel where Sanji is grabbing onto the tank, there are two empty seats, one on each side of Vegapunk. And so after that, after it cuts to the panel with Franky, we do see that there's a little silhouette sitting right next to Vegapunk in one of those seats. And so that makes it clear that Sanji was able to get into the tank and sit right next to Vegapunk. And then Franky jumped onto the tank, coincidentally holding on in the same location that Sanji had just left. That being said, because of Katarina Devon getting brought up here, because of this, here are some facts about her.
So according to the One Piece wiki, Katarina Devon's first name could actually be a reference to a female conquistador named Catalina de Erauso, who is actually well known for assuming male identities and dressing up as men while traveling the world. And that reminds me of how Devon pretended to be Absalom. In addition, according to her Vivre card, and this is actually pretty dark stuff, but according to her Vivre card, Katarina Devon's hobby is collecting the heads of beautiful women. Now I think it's pretty obvious that the Blackbeard pirates currently have no idea that Bonney is really a little girl, because otherwise if they do, that just adds a whole new layer of creepiness and darkness to the scene where Blackbeard actually asks Bonney to be his girlfriend. And then if it turns out that Katarina Devon was actually posing as Sanji in this chapter, then her wanting to get closer to Bonney makes sense, not just because of her murderous hobby, but also because Bonney has a pretty rare devil fruit, which we know Blackbeard is in the business of collecting. During the week, I also noticed a lot of people arguing back and forth about whether or not Zoro was using ACOC or KOH to fend Lucci off. So with that in mind, I just want to say the following. We know that Oda has been very inconsistent in the way that he handles Haki. And it's gotten to a point where a part of me is kind of already numbed out, especially when it pertains to discussing the armament Haki coding lightning versus the Conqueror's Haki coding lightning. But something that I stand by to this day is that Oda has made it very clear that Enma is a sword that is constantly trying to absorb as much haki as possible from its user. And it's not like the sword is differentiating between armament or conquerors, it's just sucking out haki. And I honestly think that that side effect from the sword is not going to stop until Zoro turns it into a black blade. And the reason for why I'm bringing this up is because if you look at that panel with Zoro and the swords, the only sword that shows the black haki stripe, in addition to the green flames, is Enma.
Awakened Lucci's dialogue in the scene is also pretty interesting as well, because not only is he recognizing Zoro as the number 2 of the crew, but he's also rectifying his previous statement about not recognizing Luffy as a Yonko. And I also noticed that the new command that Atlas gave the pacifistas is to wipe out the Marines. And so that's interesting because Saturn is technically not a Marine. Now, going back to what I said about the seeds that Oda has already planted in the arc that are going to play a huge role in defining how this crisis and how this incident ends. I mean, there's a bunch of them, but off the top of my head, half-dead Kuma arriving at Egghead to save Bonney is one. The Light Gloves, the Blackbeard Pirates, Katarina Devon can shapeshift, Lafitte can hypnotize people. We have the whole thing about Caribou getting upset in the beginning of the arc still in play because Zoro kicked him out of the ship. But in regards to the 2 factors that pertain to the main theme of this video, I think it's important to think about how we sort of entered Egghead. How the fandom expectation, or at least, I know some fans were sort of thinking like, oh, this is, Vegapunk's island, technology. This is going to be Franky's arc, right? Or Franky's going to have a lot to do here. Like, he could be like one of the main players here. And unfortunately, that hasn't really happened. In fact, one of the main points of comparison that people make between the pre-time skip and the post-time skip is that pre-time skip was a lot more focused on the Straw Hats. That was the main family unit back then, and Oda allowed a lot of time for that main family unit to breathe and gave the Straw Hats a significant amount of focus. Post-time skip, that focus has shifted somewhat because there are tons of side characters. Well, the world got bigger, so there's more side characters, more side quests. And so with that in mind, if you're a Straw Hat and your name is not Luffy, Nami, Sanji, or Zoro, you end up having to share a lot of the stage, a lot of the spotlight with other side characters. So that's kind of what happened here with Franky. But that being said, I think Oda does still make an effort to give some of the rest of the Straw Hats some pretty cool moments. And so I really think that that's what Oda's trying to do here with Franky. He's setting him up to have a really special moment and to be redeemed, really, because, well, first of all, we don't know why Franky's bounty poster is a picture of the Sunny. That's something weird that I think needs to be explained further. Another thing, too, is that he needs to be redeemed because last chapter, not only did he fail to shoot Kizaru with his laser, but he also failed to protect Bonney. So there's definitely this impending sense of Franky has to do something big pretty soon. Now, several chapters ago, there was actually this very brief scene where Nami actually came across some diamonds. So she found these artificial diamonds and loaded up a bag with them, but because they were in a hurry searching for Vegapunk, she decided to leave the diamonds behind. Now, as she's walking away, in that scene, she actually says, "We better come back here to get them before we leave." Now, the reason why that's important is because diamonds have the ability to refract light, which is another way of saying that they have the power to bend light. Now, by the end of the chapter, we actually see Luffy get hit by Kizaru's laser, and he just shoots the light out in different directions, but he says, oh my gosh, like this is so hot, like I'm burning up. Obviously, Luffy's made out of rubber, but diamonds are different because it takes a lot to heat up a diamond. And so not only did Edison tell Nami when she found the diamonds that they can actually create artificial diamonds there at Egghead, but as it turns out, diamonds can also be used to create a super laser. There was actually a study done several years ago where some scientists took a diamond and aimed 4 small lasers at it, okay, at one side. And what they found is that the diamond actually combined the power of all 4 lasers into one much more powerful super laser, and it shot it out the other end. So whether those diamonds that Nami found end up getting used against Kizaru, or the pacifistas and Franky get together and aim their lasers together at a big enough diamond to create a super laser. Actually, I just remembered that Bonney can actually create jewels as well. We know Oda is a huge Star Wars fan, so to me it's pretty likely now that something big is going to end up blowing up. So it's just a matter of when and how catastrophic the explosion is going to end up being. With that said, I hope I provided some food for thought. Thank you so much for watching, guys, and for all of your support. The likes and the subscriptions and all that stuff. I really appreciate it. I hope you guys have a good start to your week. Take care. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.